Hey, what's up, C-Maniac Nation? C-Man finally has a laptop, and that means it's time to bring you some really, really old content. I had a lot of stuff back in January that I was working on when my laptop got broken because I'm not smart. My new laptop then got lost in transit for a while. It finally has arrived. I am back, and like I said, I've got some things that I want you guys to check out that we're back in January, so don't mind the brighter blonde hair, and don't mind the fact that I'm coming off COVID and talking about things that are from way in the past. So, without further ado, take it away, Paris Seaman!
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sitdown. I tell you, I'm feeling better. But coming out the other side of this COVID thing, I'm like, I don't know if I'm like going through like another, like I've got weird congestion going on today. My throat is really dry and scratchy. There was a little bit of that going on yesterday too. I don't know, man. The last like 2 weeks of my life have been so weird, and I haven't necessarily liked all of it. But nevertheless, we're back. It's 2024. We're talking movies that we're from 2023, but hey, we haven't gotten to Thursday yet, and Thursday, I think, has a new movie this week. I'm not entirely sure. I'm pretty sure something is coming out. I'm a little foggy, too. Anyway, I'm not talking about anything that matters right now. What am I talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat? We are getting ready to dive in spoiler-free into Rebel Moon, Part 1, A Child of Fire. This was a movie that got shredded by the critics, got shredded by people who don't like Zack Snyder, but seemed to be enjoyed at least by everybody else. And I was certainly one of those people. I had the unique opportunity, being, New York is my backyard basically, whether I'm in Jersey or Connecticut. I was able to pop into the city, go to the Paris Theater, see the U.S. debut of Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, and I had a pretty good time, man. I can't say that, like, my bar was super, super high, because while I love me some Zack Snyder, a lot of his movies that I love, I've got issues with. So, I just was really interested to see him venture into a new world and start building something new for us Snyder fans to all love. It's one of these things like, we really loved what he was doing with that DC universe, and it never got finished. So getting to see him not just build another movie, right, but build worlds. You had that zombie movie that he did for Netflix that's had a couple things spin out of it, and there could be more world building there. But this is the one I think Netflix is waiting for, because you have Zack Snyder, a guy who wanted to do a Star Wars movie, pitched back in the day, but then Star Wars and Lucasfilm went over to Disney. That fell apart, so he said, let me rework it, make my own world. Make another space opera in the world of space operas. And one of the biggest complaints I saw around this movie is that it feels like a lot of other movies that we've seen. And that's not entirely untrue. This movie certainly has a lot of direct inspiration, and a lot of direct inspiration that feels a lot like things that came out of those movies, particularly Star Wars. This movie's definitely got some Star Wars vibes. You could say this is Zack Snyder's Star Wars world. But there's another space opera out there that actually influenced Star Wars and George Lucas, and that's, of course, Frank Herbert's book, Dune, that we're now seeing Denis Villeneuve do, where you're like, damn, dude, it's so good. But it's one of these things where I think, you look at, so everything is inspired by something, right, to a degree, but like Dune really was the antithesis of a lot of these space opera type things. Star Wars just got to screen first. That being said, yes, this has got Star Wars vibes. I think it's got more Dune vibes. I think Dune goes to some grittier, weirder places than Star Wars, and this movie certainly has that grit to it, and definitely some of that weird, man. Now, one of my favorite things about this movie is going to all the different places that we go and seeing all the different creatures and the world that Zack Snyder has built. My favorite part of Rebel Moon Part 1, well, technically, it's the droid. We'll get to Jimmy. But outside of that, watching this movie, I really enjoyed the world building. I enjoyed setting up this world. And yes, the Imperius sounds like the Imperials, and there's a lot of similar vibes to what's going on with this government organization and this farming planet that's not desert, it's farmland. But like, tomato. Yeah, look, there's lots of things like that in this movie, and I get why critics went down that pathway. But, like I said, I'm here for all of it. You know what I mean? Like, I love being able to take journeys to space. And you know what? There are gonna be kids who don't grow up with Star Wars or Dune or knowing those things immediately. And this could be their way into, the space opera. And I really do think that the world that Zack Snyder has built has me very, very intrigued to see where we go next and what we get next, specifically for our character of Cora, played by the lovely SOFIA Boutella, who impressed me. I wasn't sure she could carry a movie based on what I've seen from her in the past, because she's great. She looks great on screen. She's very striking. With her dance background, she's phenomenal at choreography and action stunt work. But I never felt like she could lead a movie. And Cora is honestly someone I'm super fascinated in. She gets the most character development out of anybody in the movie. She's our lead character. That makes sense. And she's a character that I think makes sense to build this world around, and is one that I can't wait to see where we go next with. But like I said, there's ups and downs to Snyder and his movies, and I enjoyed Rebel Moon, but there are things that are not great with it, and that's going to lead to a rant in a little bit. But I think what we'll do is we'll look at the things that I really liked from Snyder, which, as I said, were the world building. I really like the world. I like the aliens. I like the look. I like the feel. The visual effects. I've heard some people say don't look great. I thought they looked like typical Zack Snyder level effects. I mean, he did both of these movies for $200 million, give or take. So, budget could have been a little bit, maybe they could have been a little bit cleaner, but I think ultimately they worked pretty well. I went and saw the 70mm cut at the Paris. I thought it popped. I thought it looked great on a TV, for sure. But either way, I thought, personally, the visuals were great. I thought the action was not as much as I would have expected, but when we get it, this Zack Snyder action, man, this is dope. And I definitely need more action from Nemesis, played by Bayduna. We'll get to her. She had one of my favorite sequences from a standpoint, because she got them fire sword, laser sword things that aren't lightsabers, but they're like swords, but there's red fire. I don't know. But that sequence was great. Anytime action is happening in this movie, her sequence, this is a movie where we pick up a lot of people. So when you get to Staz Nair's Tarak, his action sequence is dope. I thought the finale action sequence was great. And the flashbacks and things that we got from, things that come in Cora's life and some of the other characters were all visually excellent. I really enjoyed all the action stuff that kind of popped up in here. And honestly, I really enjoyed the performances for the most part. Like I said, I thought SOFIA Boutella really popped quite well. I think she's not the best, but she was a lot better than I thought she was going to be. And she is fascinating to watch on screen. But then when you watch her move and you watch these action sequences she does, she has that one we've seen in the trailer, it happens in a barn. Son, so good. And again, the shooting and all the choreography and stuff around those sequences was great. But I think Cora was also a character that you could really relate to and vibe with and feel, because she's given all the character development. The rest of the cast here, Jaimin Hansu, always great. I love me some Ed Skrein. I'm a huge Charlie Hunnam fan. Like I said, Bayduna is really good. Ray Fisher, back working with Mr. Snyder, gets a character in Darien Bloodaxe that was one of my favorite in the whole movie. Totally popped. Love what we got out of him. Michelle Huisman is here. He's solid. Anybody that pops. Staz Nair, real solid stuff from him. Same with Cleopatra Coleman. I really enjoyed Fra Fee, who plays kind of like our second, he's like the villain above the villain type of deal. Like your Emperor to your Darth. If Screen is your Darth, he's kind of like your Emperor. I thought he was great, very intriguing. Jimmy, the android robot here, voiced by Anthony Hopkins. I thought he did great work. Like, Hopkins' voice is so good, and it coming through a droid was really awesome. And then you pair that with the physical performance from Dustin Cathamer. I got to meet Dustin after the screening outside in the Paris. He was there. That was where he lives in New York, I guess. So he was there. First time he got to see the movie on a big screen. Was awesome to talk to him. Such a good dude. Made me like Jimmy even that much more. I think his performance capture in the movie is stellar. Like, for a robot, Jimmy feels very human in both movement and how he responds to things. The way that Snyder allows Jimmy to show that he can feel things, or at least seemingly feel things, I thought was really cool. And visually, what he looks like to where they bring him by the end of the movie, like, yo, I need more Jimmy. Like, he was my favorite thing in the whole movie. I was just like, little role, not a lot. Hopefully we get lots more. But one of those where it's like, you know, I can't go into a Star Wars-y type world without an android that I love. Like, that's the one Star Wars thing that Snyder definitely nailed here, is like giving you a droid that you love. And I just hope that we get more. And ultimately, that's kind of my biggest problem with the movie, is that I wanted more for all of these people, because all these actors are very good. The performances that they put in work. Their characters visually with the performance make me intrigued, make me want to see more, but ain't none of them get any kind of backstory unless it's exposition that's told to us. And you know how I feel. Show don't tell. But, like, you know, I can give you the pass when you're opening with VO, because one, it's Anthony Hopkins VO, and you're literally setting up this whole world. So if you want to tell it to me while you're showing me little spurts and sprinklings of it, I can get past that. But when it comes to the characters, to understanding who these characters are, to spending time with these characters, yeah, none of their character development really exists at all. They're all just visual pops. And I guess, like, you can infer some things, right? Like, based on where people are coming from, people that we spend the most time with, like Charlie Hunnam, his Kai, or Michelle Huisman's Gunner. You know, like, they're characters that get a little bit more because we're with them, and we can kind of infer some things. Like, I mean, spoilers, Kai is just straight up, like, this world's friggin' Han Solo. Like, not quite as enjoyable as Han, and not necessarily things that Han would do, but, like, the character in and of himself feels very Han Solo. Like, just almost to a direct rip, which I guess you could take as good or bad. But, like, because of those things, like, there are areas where you can infer certain things about people. But in general, the character development here is not great. And I think the other biggest issue with this movie is that it feels like a piece of a movie, not a full movie. Like, we're getting part one, part two. This feels like something that was cut in half. But it also feels like a movie that cut out every little bit of character development to give us a 2-hour and change movie. And then later, after we get part two, we're going to get director's cuts of both of these movies. And this is where my biggest issue stems, and this is where the rant is coming, Netflix and Zack Snyder. Look, I think director's cuts make a lot of sense when you have something that happened, like what happened to Snyder in DC, right? Personal tragedy, steps away from the film. The film that comes out is not the movie that man made. So his director's cut gives us the ability to get to a place where we can see his vision. If the studio feels like it's meddled or cuts things down, yes, a director's cut makes sense. And it's not just Zack Snyder. Ridley Scott is infamous for having director's cuts and things like that. That's fine because it's organic, it's natural. This planned director's cut nonsense is frustrating. I think when I first heard it, I was like, oh, that could be a cool idea. But when you end up getting a movie that feels incomplete and that gets trashed for having no character development and feeling like a generic ripoff of a lot of things, because they're like, it's like all the substance of the movie feels like it's missing. And that is one on Zack Snyder in the sense that, like, my guy just apparently doesn't know how to make a movie at a normal length. But that's fine because you're paired up with a streamer in Netflix where you could have literally just done like a 4-part miniseries. Like if you have 2 4-hour movies, break it into 2-hour chunk, like that you could get an 8-episode series, or like I said, do like a 4-part miniseries. Break this thing up into 2-hour chunks. Like it's streaming. People will watch 10 hours straight of a television show when they're binging. This could play totally fine, and it's not like it's a Netflix movie that got a wide release where it's like, okay, we had to make this the length for a theatrical run because it got a full theatrical run. This movie was in a handful of theaters and only for like a week, if that, before it landed on Netflix in the first place. So when you have someone like Snyder and, the Snyder's director cut, like, okay, if you plan it that way, maybe it could work. But you don't turn in a good product to start things off. Like, you're starting the world off. You don't want this universe to fail before you can even get to the director's cut. The second problem that I have with this idea is it's not like we're getting the movie and then getting the director's cut and then getting the movie and getting the director's cut. We're getting the movie, then we're getting the other movie, and then we're supposed to get the director's cuts of these movies after that. And it's not like you have part 1 coming out, because you shot all of it and the movies are done. It's not like part 1 came out and then like a month later part 2 comes out and then by 2 months later you get in the director's cuts. Like part 2 doesn't come out till April because they're still working on it. And the director's cuts don't come out until after because they're still working on it. That's nuts, man. Like if you're going to turn in something that Zack Snyder has already said, like the director's cut's a totally different movie, why would you put out something that's not great? If you think this world is great and you think the story is great, and there's a very good possibility that when we see Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, the Zack Snyder director's cut, and we get everything that's supposed to be in there, very possible this movie improves quite a bit. But to knowingly put out something that's not great is just wild to me. And especially when it starts off on such a sour note. I mean, it has a tremendously low score from the critics. And almost all the critics thrashed this thing. And yeah, I get it. It's not about critics. I feel that way too. There are lots of movies that critics hate that I love. A lot of times it's Zack Snyder stuff. I think you're gonna get what you're gonna get with Snyder, right? But it's just like, can we just see the vision? Like, so many films in the world exist, and you get asked, oh, what is there? This is the director's cut, mother effer. You know what I mean? Like that is becoming the most irritating part, I think, to Zack Snyder is like, homie, just like write a movie that fits inside of a 2.5, 3-hour world. And then get everything in there. Like, this movie is super cool, man, because it's got, like, Dune meets Seven Samurai vibes, which I think is really cool. Snyder's slow-mos, not as many as I would have anticipated, but when they pop, they function as tableaus, as splash pages. I love that. And it works so well with this world. The visuals in this world lend itself to those types of things that Snyder can do. But to just give a movie that has seemingly all of the character stuff stripped from it is frustrating. And it's like, when I saw the movie, I liked it. I was pro it. I was more like the critics on this one. I think they got it wrong. People are going to enjoy this. And people are enjoying this. But the more I've sat with the movie, the more I thought about it and the thought of this strategy, it's really irritating because you do end up with a subpar movie. Like, for me, this one is, based on what's given to us, is like right down the middle, and I'm maybe leaning a little bit toward the positive side of that middle because I dig the things that we're given, right? Like, I think Cora is a badass character and SOFIA Boutella can do some cool things. And I like her group, like a lot of this movie is, okay, we go over here, pick up this person, we go over here, pick up this person. Like, we're building our rebellion by just pulling these people, but then we don't get to spend any time with them, and then they're just like a formulated group doing things, and you're like, well, that didn't feel right. Like, I feel like we should probably get to know these people a little bit more. The one that I think takes the biggest hit in this regard is Ed Skrein. I think Skrein is really solid when he's in movies in general, specifically playing a bad guy. He's a wonderful bad guy. But Atticus Noble just feels so surface. And there's just not enough for screen to even make him terrifying or menacing in a way that feels legitimate, that feels like, man, this is our Darth Vader type stuff. Like, there are elements that are in there, but it's all missing. And I saw Screen recently interviewed where he was like, yeah, there's a lot more for Atticus in the director's cuts. And it's like, that stuff drives me nuts. It's like, even the actors know that the good, like, there's better stuff in the, just give it to me all at once, Netflix. Like, son of a bee. I've gone off on a tangent. I apologize, but I had to get it out, man, because it's frustrating to have something that you like and have to feel like you got to defend it, knowing that the reason that you're defending it is because, well, half the movie's missing. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's not, I don't know how you can course correct at this point, because things are in motion and these things apparently are not finished. You just kind of have to write it out. But like, if I was Netflix, I would have, like, after this movie opened, I would have been like, Zach, pause part 2. Get the director's cut of part 1 finished so we can get that out. Because, like, for me, I think the thing that's going to hurt the franchise is that you have a lot of people that just see an incomplete movie, and because it's incomplete, it's a bad movie for them. If you're not a Zack Snyder fan, I don't know what this movie gives you that you walk out going, oh man, I can't wait to see that director's cut. Like, that's what the vibe, I think, is what Netflix was hoping for. But that's not what's going to happen. Fact of the matter, and now, like, you push it out over a year before we get the director's cut. People that don't like this movie got to wait 6 months for part 2, which would be the other half of the story that maybe could elevate part 1. 6 months is a long-ass time if people didn't like the first movie. I don't know if they'll dip their toe in the second time. But they say, you know what? Let's see what the other half of this movie is. And they dip their toe in for the second time. If that plays the same way as this one, where it's like, well, there's clearly lots of movie missing here, and because of that, the story suffers and the characters suffer, and you don't like it, and if you're 3, 4, 5, 6 months from that, before the director's cuts, the actual vision intended for us from the director is shown, how many of the people that don't like this stuff are going to come back to be like, oh, you know what? Give me 2, 3 more hours of this stuff between these 2 parts, and let's see how much better this movie gets. Like, I don't think a lot of people are going to do that, and it's frustrating because I like Rebel Moon, but you've presented it and given it to me in a way where, like, I don't like the process, that it's almost reflecting a negative on the movie. But that being said, my rant is done. Let's get the C-Maniacs up and let's talk about what kind of score we're giving this. Like I said, Zack Snyder is your writer and director here. I think he creates a world that is worthwhile. This is a world I want to go back to. I want to have more adventures in this world. It visually, I think, looks pretty stellar. The action that's in here is dope. When you get those flourishes of things that feel like Star Wars or Dune, you know, these big space opera type vibes, I think the movie thrives. I think it's working. All that stuff is there. The one thing that we didn't talk about before my rant, of course, is the score, which comes to us from Tom Holkenborg, who crushed score in this one, and the sound design in this one is excellent. Really makes you feel like you're in a space opera. Has the gravitas to it that makes it feel epic. Like, it's one of these things where it's like the visual and the score and the sound design feels epic. The characters look like they are in an epic, but then you get to the movie and it doesn't feel epic because you're missing a bunch of stuff. And that's the thing that's rough for me in this movie. It's like, all the things you love Zack Snyder for are in here, and all those things are really good. And they're mostly what the movie... It's like we stripped out all the stuff that doesn't just speak like, Zack Snyder! Like, it doesn't scream it from the rooftops. And we left all the stuff in that does scream Zack Snyder. And that's the movie that we have. And the tableaus, and the slow-mos, and the visuals, and the action, and all that stuff works really, really well. But the story feels like it's been cut into. It feels like we're being told a lot of things rather than shown some stuff. The characters all suffer on the development side unless your name is Cora. Like, SOFIA Boutella, thought she was really solid, man. Turns in a really strong effort as your lead. creates a character that's intriguing, that you want to ride with, that you're down for a part 2 with. But after that, nobody has character development. And everybody suffers in that regard. Like, there are cool characters in here. Some decisions with some of those cool characters, I was like, why would we do that? But then also, like, you don't feel like you're as invested in these characters or what it is that they're going to do or understanding why they're all joining together, because all of that stuff seems to be missing from the movie. And I think ultimately the decision to do that and have these director's cuts and have them come out so far away and after the second part, like, all of this is just bad decision making from the Netflix standpoint, and that makes this movie suffer to the point where I have to go 2.5 out of 5 for Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, because this movie is half good. You know what I mean? And it's half bad because it seems to be half missing. And a movie of halves, it's not what you want in the world. So, look, I'm here. I've got a lot of experience watching Zack Snyder movies, and I'm a fan of his. And I can see the vision. I can see how these things end up playing out better. I can see a director's cut really working, but it's just not good enough to do this strategy, in my opinion. I think the movie is hurt a little bit more by these things, and because of that, I can see the good stuff here. When we get that, I'm really, really love this stuff. Like, this is a world I want to play in. This is a world I want stories told in. This is a place I want more for. I want Zack to be involved. I want to get more, like, it's just, I need everything there. And I think that's the biggest problem with Snyder, is that he doesn't seem to know how to get everything there in a manageable time frame. It's tough, because I'm always here for lots of content. And like I said, I think this would probably play better in a miniseries vibe than in these individual movies with director's cuts coming later. But yeah, I don't know. I think I've said everything I have to say about Rebel Moon Part 1. It's a movie I liked. It's a movie I didn't love. I think I could love it when I see the full vision. But will I want to care? You all know that I will. I'm obviously going to watch the director's cut when it comes out. But yeah, there are just cool things in here. Stuff that I think will work when we're given the full vision. But right now we don't have that. So where that lands for you, it's up to each of you to make that decision. And I'm going to shut up and I'm going to turn it over to each and every one of you. What are you thinking? What about Rebel Moon worked for you? What did you like? What did you dislike? Did it feel like things were missing? Does this feel like half a movie? Does it feel like even less than half a movie, right? Because we're getting half of a movie. You know what I mean? Because it's broken into 2 parts. What do you think about this strategy from Netflix? Anything you got, good, bad, indifferent, but keep it spoiler-free on Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire. Put it down below in the comments section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, want to come hang out with the C-Man, anytime we're talking movies, TV, trailer, reactions, you want to be here for my top 10 other movies that we're getting caught up on. There's some watch things, there's some reactions coming. You want to be here for any of that stuff, you want to show a little love and support because you haven't yet, well, hey, come join C-Maniac Nation. All those things happen there, and you can do that simply by jumping over there, hitting that subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts, and until next time for the C-Man Cinema Sit Down, I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace.
Oh, you guys are still here. You snuck up on me. You must be looking for more of this guy. Well, I got 2 video options for you, man. Right up here and right over here. And if you want all those C-Man goodies, well, hey, come join the squad right on over there, and I'll catch you on the next one.